This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Shahida Othman. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. The Chinese and US defense ministers meet their ASEAN counterparts in Laos, but no sideline talks for the two superpowers. Washington says Beijing's refusal to meet is a setback for the whole region. A lion, 2 bears and 5 cockatoos, all gifts of Russian Vladimir Putin to North Korea after both sides agreed to bolster flights in a key trade meeting. The US, China, South Korea, Finland and Singapore top the latest global index on digital development. We find out how AI and innovation are driving global competition. A disappointing revenue forecast from Nvidia rippling across its suppliers in South Korea and Taiwan amid concerns that AI hype has become overblown. Ahead on East Asia tonight, we delve into the success of Nvidia as well as the role of Taiwan in the AI revolution that's reshaping the world, economies, and even how we approach problem solving. And we turn to India's pharmaceutical industry, a sector that could benefit from possible tariffs that the upcoming Trump administration may impose on Chinese companies. But there is one crucial aspect that Indian manufacturers need to urgently work on. Defense chiefs from Southeast Asia are meeting their counterparts from China, the US and other partner nations in Laos. The security talks come amid heightening tensions in the region, as well as issues of concern beyond.
这是一次以东盟为中心，汇聚各方智慧，共同努力维护地区稳定和发展的一次重要的会议。我愿借此机会，与各位同事们一道深入的探讨交流，共同携手推动着地区的合作与发展。
The talks put Chinese Defense Minister Zhang Jun in the same room as his U.S. counterpart, a day after he refused a request by Lloyd Austin to meet on the sidelines of the meeting. Mr. Austin says he regrets Mr. Dong's decision, calling it a setback for the whole region. Now, for more on this, we're now joined by CNA's Olivia Xiong in Beijing. Olivia, how are you reading into the Chinese minister's refusal to meet with his U.S. counterpart?
Shah, speaking to some observers, what they do say that is China's refusal to sit down with the U.S. one-on-one, while that may be seen as a snub, it's also not necessarily surprising. And there are a few reasons for this. First being, if you recall, when Chinese President Xi Jinping sat down with his outgoing U.S. counterpart over the weekend, Joe sat down with Mr. Biden, he did say that he was ready to work with President-elect Trump to boost bilateral ties. And President Xi's comments were viewed as being more as a message to the incoming Trump administration. And with Mr. Trump set to be inaugurated in January, observers say that China may view any talks between the two sides under the Biden administration as being of not much use. Now, second of all, even as China and the U.S. have sought to work out their military ties and to improve dialogue on that front, as we have seen this year, analysts tell me that China may want to have a meeting on its own terms. During that same meeting between President Xi and President Biden, Mr. Xi made clear that even though he felt that the two countries did not have to fight a new Cold War, he also did say that there were 4 red lines that the U.S. must not cross, one of them relating to the self-ruled island of Taiwan that Beijing claims as its own. And we know that Beijing has been angered over the sales by the U.S. last month of arms sales worth $2 billion, which included an advanced air defense missile system for the first time. Some analysts speculating whether this is retaliation for that. Shah.
So what do these latest developments mean for ASEAN then, Ollie?
Shah, ASEAN would be looking at the refusal between China and the U.S. to sit down one-on-one with concern. One of the key issues being that ASEAN has needed to tackle one of the hot-button issues being the disputed South China Sea. Now, several Southeast Asian states have competing claims with China in these waters, and tensions have been rising, especially with the latest clashes between China and the Philippines this year. Vietnam has also said that its fishermen were assaulted by Chinese forces in the area. Some view China as becoming more assertive over its territorial claims. Now, China, on its part, has also been angered by the U.S. conducting drills in these disputed waters, warning that the U.S. and foreign forces should not be interfering in regional territorial disputes. Now, one expert also told me that one area of concern is for ASEAN as a bloc, especially as it seeks to be a platform that brings different countries together for dialogue. Also, as it says, it takes no sides. Have a listen.
All this is predicated on a view that others have an interest in engaging with each other and wanting to use ASEAN as a platform to do so. Now, when it comes to issues like the South China Sea, like the Mekong and other contentious matters, to the extent that other actors don't feel so much a need to sort of use ASEAN to convene to meet others at ASEAN, that will lower, perhaps diminish the role that ASEAN plays in the region as an organization that sort of brings different actors together.
Now, this may also have implications for long-standing negotiations over the code of conduct on the South China Sea that's between China and the ASEAN states, with a goal to complete the code by 2026. But analysts are saying that if China and the U.S. are not talking and tensions continue, this could make completion of this code of conduct even more difficult. Shah.
All right, Olivia Seong there reporting live from Beijing. Thank you. Russia and North Korea have agreed to boost charter flights following a trade meeting on Tuesday between officials on both sides. The additional routes are expected to serve not just Russia's eastern region close to North Korea, but also other major Russian cities. A Russian government delegation led by Natural Resources Minister Alexander Kozlov met with North Korean officials to discuss bilateral cooperation in various areas, including energy, agriculture, and science and technology. The delegation had met North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on Monday. While the international focus may be on military cooperation between the two countries, Mr. Putin has also gifted North Korea with more than 70 animals. This latest diplomatic gesture between Moscow and Pyongyang means Pyongyang Zoo will be home to a lion, 2 brown bears, and many ducks. The US, China, South Korea, Finland, and Singapore have become the top 5 countries in the latest global index on digital development. The ranking is part of the World Internet Development Report released at the World Internet Conference in Wuzhen, China. CNE's Tan Yu-Guan reports from Wuzhen.
Over 52 countries were evaluated in the World Internet Report released by the Chinese Academy of Cyberspace Studies. The United States is far and away the leader of the pack. Nearly 9 points separates the US from China in number 2, which in turn is ahead of South Korea by 2 points, while the rest of the pack in the top 10 was separated by mere decimals. Also released on the same day was the China Internet Development Report. Among the numbers of note, in 2023, China's online audio-visual market is about $159 billion. That's about 1/5 of the digital economy, which in turn exceeded $1.6 trillion last year, making up 10% of GDP. For context, the property sector, an important pillar of the Chinese economy, accounts for 25% of its GDP. China is pinning its hopes on the digital economy to serve as a new catalyst for growth, but US sanctions targeting its tech industry are threatening to disrupt growth. During the release of the report, without naming names, the head of the academy behind the findings slammed certain countries for their pursuit of tech hegemony.
个别国家凭借技术领先优势，大搞技术霸权，恶意破坏全球信息技术合作与创新，严重阻碍了全人类的技术进步。集成电路的发展逐步逼近物理极限，如何寻找新的突破方向，仍然是一大难题。 人工智能大模型技术虽有一定的优势，但需要巨大的算力算力的底层是能源的巨大消耗。如何规范有序发展，需要国际社会共同探索和努力。
Day 2 of the World Internet Conference also saw numerous forums taking place revolving around artificial intelligence. Among the topics discussed were the need for a market framework for data that will protect privacy, given data's critical role in training large language models or LLMs. There were also discussions around pivoting China's advantage in manufacturing to release the full potential of AI, such as incorporating AI into electronic hardware of the future. Tan Yuguan, CNA, Wuzhen, Zhejiang, China.
And coming up on East Asia tonight, South Korea's central bank survey revealing local financiers and experts getting more concerned about U.S. policy risks after Trump's win in the presidential election. Plus, Chinese EV makers shrugging off higher tariffs as they push sales in export markets in the face of stiff competition and sluggish economy at home. And we're back on East Asia tonight. Let's take a look into the world of business with Henry. Henry, the global tech industry keenly watching AI's darling Nvidia's report card.
Yes, indeed, Shah, but unfortunately, it underwhelmed expectations and raising the questions that whether the artificial intelligence boom is waning. And let's take a look at some of the share performances. Nvidia's forecast of its slowest revenue growth in 7 quarters weighed tech-heavy indices in East Asia, checking Kospi closing the day down marginally, while TAIEX moving down by about 0.6%. Nvidia's suppliers in the region mostly fell, with Samsung being the only exception. And remember, Samsung, SK Hynix and Samsung supply AI memory chips to Nvidia. And also checking TSMC shares is now down by 1.5%, closing the day, and major supplier of an advanced chip for Nvidia. And checking Foxconn shares as well, closing the day off by about 4.3%. It's building the largest production facility for Nvidia's GB200 superchips. Well, Japanese technology conglomerate SoftBank saw share tumble over 1%. The group owns a stake in chip designer ARM, which provides circuit designs called architecture to Nvidia. And Nvidia's revenue forecast failed to impress investors who were banking on its continuing meteoric rise. And fourth quarter revenue is seen at $37.5 billion, slightly higher than the average market estimate, and got a lukewarm investor reception. As for its third quarter numbers, it beat on both the top and bottom lines, with the revenue nearly doubling from the same period 1 year ago. But the disappointing outlook pushed Nvidia's stock lower by 2.5% in extended trade. Investors had lofty expectations going into this earnings release, with the stock up more than 20% over the last 2 months. Nvidia has been the primary beneficiary of the ongoing AI boom. But questions are now being raised over whether the AI hype is getting overblown. Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang says the age of AI is in full steam, propelling a global shift to Nvidia computing. Investors will be watching to see if demand for the company's next-generation AI chip called Blackwell can help it maintain the red-hot pace. And the firm says the Blackwell is in full production, adding that the shipments of the chips will ramp up next year. But demand for Nvidia has been so strong that it's having trouble filling all the orders it's receiving. And also, manufacturing partner TSMC has limited capacity and has become a bottleneck. Despite that, recent earnings reports from Nvidia's key customers, such as Microsoft and Amazon, suggest that they still plan to keep spending on AI infrastructure. And there is no stopping for governments pouring in billions in the race to AI supremacy. Taiwan says it will spend about $3 billion on AI technology over the next 3 years. And Taiwan's Science and Technology Minister Wu Chengwen made the comments during an interview with Nikkei Asia, noting that AI sovereignty is a critical issue that President Lai Ching-te aims to prioritize during his term by ramping up Taiwan's own AI data center and increasing computing capability. Taiwan's AI push comes as larger economies coupled with tech giants gear up to build their own generative AI infrastructure. The government hopes that investments in AI infrastructure can generate minimally tenfold returns, driving Taiwan's growth and solidifying its position as a key Asian tech economy. Well, the world's top AI chip developers are already in partnership with Taiwan. Mr. Wu also asserted that Taiwan also aims to strengthen cooperation with the U.S. under President-elect Donald Trump. Later, we take a wider look at how Taiwan has benefited from Nvidia's AI success. Our correspondent Victoria Jan will join us for that head in the program. Well, a change in U.S. policies has emerged as a major concern for South Korean officials following the U.S. presidential election. A Bank of Korea survey showed local financiers and experts are worried about the impact of Donald Trump's planned tariffs on the export-reliant country. And some 80 people took part in the annual poll between October the 29th and November the 8th. Well, the results showed that the potential for external headwinds to weigh on South Korea's financial system has worsened, and more than half were concerned about U.S. policy changes. The issue ranked second in the list of risks for the country, only trailing elevated household debt. Mr. Trump won the election on November the 5th with a platform that includes higher tariffs for trading partners. South Korea is among countries with the highest trade surpluses against the U.S. Such risks may continue to weigh on monetary decision of the Bank of Korea. And the BOK will hold its next interest rate decision meeting next week. Economists are expecting to hold at 3.25% by the Bank of South Korea. Well, South Korea has confirmed that North Korean hackers were behind the theft of more than $40 million in cryptocurrency 5 years ago. And this marks the first time an investigative agency from the South has verified Pyongyang's involvement in such crimes. South Korea's National Police Agency said Pyongyang state-sponsored hacking groups Lazarus and Andario were involved in the theft of 342,000 Ethereum tokens from crypto exchange Upbit in November 2019. The value of the tokens have gone up since then and are now equivalent to more than $1 billion. South Korean police said they tracked IP addresses and cryptocurrency flows and detected the use of the North Korean language. Police say Pyongyang sold more than half of the stolen Ethereum tokens at 2.5% below market price in exchange for Bitcoin tokens. The remainder was said to be distributed to 51 overseas exchanges and laundered. While Japan's equity market struggled for direction today, technology stocks tracked the Nasdaq's overnight decline, while financials rose amid bets for a Bank of Japan interest rate hike. Well, the benchmark Nikkei 225 closed lower, the Japanese yen hovering around 155 to the US dollar level. Investors also keeping watch on much talked about stimulus measures from Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, who is set to unveil a $140 billion package, according to public broadcaster NHK. Well, the package is said to include support for sustained wage gains and cash handouts for low-income households, as well as investment into the semiconductor and artificial intelligence sector. Should the plan push through, it's expected to be approved by the Japanese cabinet Friday, following Prime Minister Ishiba's return from the G20 summit in Brazil. BYD has announced plans to bring its latest SUV model into the European market, despite recent tariff hikes imposed on China-made electric vehicles. BYD will start delivering the Sea Lion 07 to customers from 2025. It'll be the automaker's 7th pure electric model to be sold in Europe. The price is not yet known, but the car starts at about $26,000 in China, with deliveries to the mainland beginning in May next year. Overseas sales made up only 10% of BYD's total deliveries in the first 10 months of 2024. The automaker's latest push in the EU signals its confidence in the industry outlook, even after the bloc vote last month to impose additional tariffs on Chinese EVs. For the next 5 years, BYD cars are subject to a 17% rate in the bloc on top of the existing 10% tariffs. China is the world's largest automotive and EV market, accounting for 65% of the global sales volume in the first half of the year. But local EV makers are facing intensifying rivalry in the overcrowded industry. Chinese authorities have offered subsidies for new energy vehicle buyers to boost consumer spending and revive the economy. State media Xinhua says Beijing plans to extend car trade-in incentives into 2025 to stabilize market expectations. Well, Germany's big three auto companies have issued profit warnings amid tariff tensions between the European Union and China. The dispute comes as industry leaders in Germany acknowledge that their long, successful business model is facing unprecedented pressure from a number of Chinese electric vehicle makers intent on gaining market share in the European market. Trent Murray has the story.
For Germany's auto sector, the warning lights are flashing. The country's most prominent industrial export, long recognised for heavyweights like Mercedes-Benz, BMW and Volkswagen, are, by their own admission, in some trouble.
Is this something new in the auto industry? No, it's not. Continuous improvement has been in the DNA of the auto industry probably since its inception, but we need to now realize that we're out of the pandemic, we're out of this constraint story. Let's get our mojo back.
Amid the world's shift from petrol combustion engines to EVs, German firms find themselves stuck between two major pressure points. First, adjusting assembly lines from fossil fuel-powered vehicles to newer, greener technology. And secondly, facing new competition from Asia, particularly from China, as a number of new brands make inroads into Europe with new technology-laden vehicles offered at highly competitive prices.
And in the long run, we expect half of our sales globally to come from outside of China. So to achieve this goal, Europe is definitely our core focus. We have a long-term commitment here, and we have more dedicated resources in Europe than any other region.
Germany may be renowned for its manufacturing prowess, but making a battery-powered vehicle is vastly different from making an internal combustion engine, requiring new software and supply chains, which Germany is finding hard to adapt to. High energy costs for production, high labour costs when compared to China and India, and stringent EU regulations, all combining to slow down any attempt to catch up.
We want to rescue our economy.
Thorsten Ausleben leads one of Germany's most prominent free market think tanks. He says a major shift is needed if German firms hope to combat structural competitiveness issues.
Germany is at a crossroads to decide in which direction we go. Either we continue being in the situation as we are, we don't change anything, then we will slowly go away into European Industry Museum. Or we do a change of our frameworks and we'll go away of success, of being competitive again. Of course, we have to do reforms in the companies, but more in the politics. But when we do that, it will be hard, but when we do that, in the next 2 or 3 years, we can be successful as we have been before.
To try and shield its auto sector from what it says is unfair state-backed subsidies, the EU recently announced additional tariffs of up to 36.3% on Chinese-made EVs, despite German opposition to the plans. German companies still maintain about 15% of car sales in China, down from a pre-pandemic high of 25%. Their boardrooms telling politicians in Berlin they worry where tariffs could lead to in terms of Beijing's response. Germany was one of just 5 countries in the European Union to vote against a new round of tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. For lawmakers in that building behind me there, they have heard the concerns of the German auto industry that any sort of trade war between the EU and China could cause serious damage to Germany's export-driven economy. But the question is how to respond to the new competition from Chinese EVs. For the government, they say it's up to German automakers to compete on technology and innovation. But Germany's auto sector is likely to face pressure on further fronts moving forward, amid warnings from US President-elect Donald Trump that a minimum 10% tariff could be applied to Europe's exports to America. German car brands in particular attracting his ire over trade deficits.
I said to Angela Merkel when she was there, she's not there anymore, I wonder why, but when she was there, I said, Angela, how many Chevrolets do we have in Berlin? Why, Donald, you have none. He said, that's right. How many Fords do we have in Frankfurt? I don't know, none. I said, that's right. You know how many cars we have? Mercedes-Benz and BMW and all of the different Volkswagen, millions and millions of cars.
Amid profit warnings, job cuts and even plant closures, warning lights are flashing within Germany's industry and government alike. Right now, the question that's being asked, is this a mere bump in the road for the country's most important export or a complete breakdown in the ability to compete? Trent Murray, CNA, Berlin.
And that's all for business. Back to you, Shah.
Appreciate that, Henry. Well, coming up on East Asia tonight, we speak to our Taiwan correspondent Victoria Jen on the AI revolution that's reshaping the world and economies. Defense chiefs from Southeast Asia are meeting their counterparts from China, the US and other partner nations in Laos. The security talks come amid heightening tensions in the region, as well as issues of concern beyond. Russia and North Korea, in a further sign of warming ties, have agreed to boost charter flights following a trade meeting on Tuesday between officials on both sides. The World Internet Conference out with its World Internet Development Report. The US, China, South Korea, Finland and Singapore make up the top 5 states in the latest global index on digital development. Taiwan's microchip industry is sailing on the back of an AI boom, and there's massive hype around big names such as Nvidia boss Jensen Huang, so much so that local media have coined a term for this effect. In this week, CNA correspondent Victoria Jen takes a look at how Jensen Huang and the island are connected.
Jensen Huang, the CEO of U.S. chip company Nvidia, set up a media frenzy when he was in Taiwan in June this year. He was here for Computex, one of Asia's premier IT shows. Everywhere the tech boss went, he was mobbed like a rock star. Local media had a name for the frenzy surrounding him. They call it Jensanity. As part of the 2-week trip, the 61-year-old made a stop at the National Taiwan University, where he gave a keynote speech. Thousands of people, including the who's who of Taiwan's tech industry, gathered to hear him speak. During the near 2-hour presentation, Huang painted a future that will be revolutionized by AI.
For the very first time, the IT industry, which is $3 trillion, $3 trillion IT industry, is about to create something that can directly serve $100 trillion of industry. No longer just an instrument for information storage or data processing, but a factory for generating intelligence for every industry. Everything is going to be robotic. All of the factories will be robotic. The factories will orchestrate robots, and those robots will be building products that are robotic. Robots interacting with robots, building products that are robotic.
Huang, who was born in the southern Taiwanese city of Tainan before immigrating to the U.S. at the age of 9, left no doubt that Taiwan holds a special place in his heart.
谢谢你，台湾，让我们继续为这段 AI 创新之旅打造一个成功和繁荣的产业。
One of the highlights of Huang's visit was his meetings with local tech bosses, such as Morris Chang, the legendary founder of chip giant TSMC, and Taiwan's richest man and tech magnate Barry Lane.
黄仁勋从1993年创办 Nvidia 到现在，他都是跟台湾公司打交道。啊，比如说一开始的绘图晶片，他就是卖给台湾的绘图卡主机板公司。 所以他非常了解台湾的公司的产业形态。那么现在你会发现说，他从最上头的尖端晶片的制造交给台积电，那封装测试也交给台积电、日月光这些公司。第三个部分主机板也交给鸿海、伟创这些公司。然后接下来的 subsystem 有那个 server 整个系统，还有 rack 就整套的伺服器，然后你还有伺服器的加速器，你要做到数据中心 hyperscale 这种东西呢？ 不是一般公司可以做，因为它非常复杂，所以台湾有很多家公司同时帮他分工。
The ecosystem around Nvidia and the AI boom is expected to further expand, benefiting more companies in Taiwan.
And for more on this, we have correspondent Victoria Jen joining us live from Taipei. Victoria, Jensenity indeed. From what we just heard there, the message seems to be that without Taiwan, there will be no Nvidia, which also means there will be no AI.
Yes, you're right. Taiwan and Nvidia and AI by extension are inseparable. And Jensen Huang wants to continue to maintain that close connection in order to excel in the AI realm. His close relationship with TSMC in the past 30 years is especially vital to NVIDIA's survival. TSMC is the sole production partner for NVIDIA's most advanced training chips, including its latest Blackwell lines. This ensures that his company has priority access to the most advanced chips. They are critical to NVIDIA's GPU production and maintain its position as a leader in AI hardware. Taiwan's dominance in semiconductor production means that NVIDIA's chips are often the first to market. And the fact that TSMC could deliver the 7-nanometer chips quickly and efficiently for NVIDIA allow it to be among the first to release next-generation GPUs that outperform competitors like AMD and Intel in many benchmarks. Plus, the fact that Taiwan is becoming an important hub for AI would mean that NVIDIA can leverage Taiwan's AI ecosystem to keep its leading role in the AI race.
So this is making Taiwan sound very irreplaceable, Victoria, but it seems unwise for businesses to put all their eggs in one basket because we know that countries like Malaysia and Vietnam, they also want a piece of the pie.
That's a very good question. Taiwan's dominance in AI is not without risk. We know, for example, potential military conflict in the Taiwan Strait could be disastrous for NVIDIA and the AI boom. But before we get into the details, I would like our viewers to have a listen to what this longtime industry analyst has to say.
所以台湾是在电子产品里面，从最上游的晶片到最下游的组装，通通都会做。所以这个是台湾很特别的优势。所以台湾过去的40年是一步一步 step by step 一步一步往上突破的。那现在所有新兴国家要做这个事情几乎不可能，所以台湾这个 ecosystem 短期间之内，我认为至少10年是黄金10年。
So basically, what he said is companies may have no choice because the technology ecosystem formed over the past 40 years cannot easily be replicated. Taiwan has developed an intricate and highly efficient tech supply chain with thousands of interconnected companies that provide everything from raw materials to final components. For example, key players like MediaTek, ASE, and Foxconn rely on this ecosystem to provide critical components at lightning speed. Replicating this kind of ecosystem requires not only a massive investment in infrastructure, but also years of coordination among firms, local governments, and global partners. Now that Taiwan is becoming an AI hub, it will continue to become more and more indispensable to the global supply chain.
So if Taiwan is going to be the AI hub for the next 10 years, Victoria, which companies are going to benefit the most from this so-called golden decade?
Well, as the world's largest contract chip maker, TSMC definitely deserves the most attention. It has already seen its share price hitting a record high. And the fact that it produces more than 90% of the world's most advanced chips has also put it way ahead of all of its competitors. Now, TSMC is expected to be a key beneficiary of the AI boom as demand for advanced semiconductor surges. Another company is MediaTek, the world's largest smartphone chip maker. It has introduced AI-focused chipsets that incorporate AI processing units for mobile devices. It's expected to benefit considerably from the strong demand for AI-powered smartphones. Last but not least is Foxconn, the world's largest contract electronic maker. News reports say that Apple is in talks with Foxconn to make AI servers. But Foxconn has already reached full capacity because of orders from Nvidia. Other smaller companies also benefit from the AI boom. For instance, AVD is a company that develops liquid cooling systems that can keep up with the Nvidia's far hotter Blackwell generations of AI chips and systems. So you can see how hotly sought after these Taiwanese tech companies are in the global market.
And you mentioned there the risk of a military conflict in the Taiwan Strait, and that could just derail Taiwan's AI dream. But is that the only challenge facing the industry?
Yeah, that's right. But before I get into the details, I would like us to hear from Colin Huang again.
1958年，那么到现在，我出生那一年，台湾只有1009万人，但是出生了416000人，我们是 baby boomer。去年台湾新生儿只有136000人，但是我们台湾有2300多万人，少子化的问题是很严重，所以这个时候不是只有基础劳工的问题，工程师不足，那我们应该怎么办？
So aging is a huge concern. Taiwan is due to become a super-age society next year, with 20% of its population over the age of 65. Now, the problem is further exacerbated by one of the world's lowest birth rates. Official data shows that Taiwan could lose 35% of its population by 2070, and that is going to deal a big blow to Taiwan's workforce. But some Taiwanese companies are already making necessary preparations. Quanta, the world's largest laptop producer, for instance, has reduced its staff to 1/3 from 5 years ago by replacing workforce with smart manufacturing technology. So that's very important in coping with labor shortage. Back to you.
All right, appreciate that chat, Victoria. Thank you so much. That's Victoria Jen in Taipei. You can catch the full episode of CNA Correspondent Taiwan's AI Dominance online on YouTube and MeWatch. We're going for a short break now, but coming up on East Asia tonight, we turn to the US. A charge for Indian billionaire Gautam Adani has triggered multi-billion-dollar wipeout from its group stocks. And India aims to double the size of its pharmaceutical industry by 2030. But a CNA investigative report tells us a few factors may stand in its way. Here's another story gripping markets today. The indictment of one of India's biggest business conglomerates in the US in connection with an alleged multi-billion-dollar fraud scheme. That triggered a sell-off in its company's stocks and bonds. Now, those losses running from 10 to 23% along several listed businesses of the Indian billionaire. The net worth of Asia's second richest person sank more than $15 billion following the stock rout. American prosecutors say Gautam Adani and other executives paid more than $250 million in bribes to Indian government officials and concealed them from U.S. investors. The bribes were allegedly paid to obtain solar energy supply contracts, with the schemes taking place between 2020 and 2024. The contracts were projected to generate more than $2 billion in post-tax profit over 2 decades. U.S. authorities say Adani personally met with an Indian government official to facilitate the plan. Authorities also say the defendants frequently met and discussed the bribery scheme, citing evidence gathered from several phones. The Adani Group has called the U.S. charges baseless, but the indictment threatens to plunge his conglomerate into turmoil and adds to a nearly 2-year roller coaster for the tycoon ever since short seller Hindenburg Research published a report alleging fraud and corporate governance issues in January 2023. India's securities regulator began an investigation into the group last year and is yet to conclude its probe. U.S. President-elect Trump proposed tariffs of 60 to 100% on Chinese imports during his campaign for the White House. Presumably, this could affect imports of Chinese pharmaceutical products that America depends on. Now, India is one country could capitalize on this U.S.-China rivalry, but they need to first raise standards to meet export requirements. Now, this week's episode of CNA's Current Affairs program, Insight, explores this issue.
In September, the U.S. Congress passed the Biosecure Act. It bars U.S. pharma companies from working with 5 named Chinese biotech firms.
The Biosecure Act is really about preventing national security threats. Big Pharma, when they're conducting clinical trials and they're gathering information to be able to prescribe medicine, they are gathering individual health information that is transmitted into the cloud, into databases that can be exploited. And the problem in this case is that these private companies, Big Pharma, are linked to companies in other countries, primarily China, who has really cornered the market on Big Pharma.
I think the worry is that biosecurity can be weaponized and be used as an instrument of war. In an event of a conflict between the US and China, these products can be used by both parties to inflict heavy damage on each other.
If the Biosecure Act becomes law, it could lead to a decoupling of the Chinese and American pharma industries. China is the 4th largest supplier of medicines to the US. It is also the world's largest producer of active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs. These are the active components of drug products. Beijing has criticized the Biosecure Act.
美方应当放弃意识形态偏见，切实尊重市场原则和经贸规则，停止推进有关法案，停止滥用各种借口，无理打压中国企业，为各国企业提供公平、公正和非歧视的营商环境。
What Beijing is likely to do is to say the United States is turning its back on biosecurity cooperation. It is turning its back on issues that concerns us all as human beings, about the need to ensure human beings everywhere have access to the latest pharmaceutical products, so on and so forth.
It's a very easy lens to put on that, oh, this is the U.S. is doing competition with China. No, it's very, very simple. It's the U.S. government being very responsible government to protect their own citizens, and it is their right. And this specific act is to protect their own citizens, not the act of the rivalry between the U.S. and China.
In any case, should America reduce its reliance on Chinese biotech, there could be an opportunity for India to fill the gap. The US is by far the world's largest import market for pharmaceuticals.
American companies can diversify with our friends, partners, and allies, with India, with Japan, with Korea, and with countries that really support the rules-based international order and follow international norms and procedures to the mutual benefit of all.
Indian pharma industry is highly excited as far as Biosecure Act is concerned. What we need to do is further build on the talent, think of scale, and strengthen our reliability quotient to leverage fully as far as Biosecure Act advantage is concerned.
But there is one hurdle: quality control. For India to expand its market share, more manufacturers will have to meet the US Food and Drug Administration standards, which are often more stringent than domestic benchmarks.
If I'm exporting to the United States or Europe, and I know a US FDA inspector is going to come and inspect my plant, and they have very strict protocols on how they conduct the inspection, I will try to make sure that I meet those standards.
Failed inspections can have dire consequences for patients. In 2022, an Indian manufacturer, Intas, did not pass the FDA's muster, leading the company to suspend production of cisplatin, an important drug for chemotherapy. Laura Bray runs a non-profit which helps to source for drugs that are in short supply. She was called to action during the cisplatin shortage.
This is pretty dire. This was a scary one. It was dire. And what we needed to do was make sure that our partners knew that this was happening, that they were ready with emergency supply if patients fell through the cracks, so that we could quickly triage as many patients as possible through our supply sharing network. So this shortage really harmed patients who were going through gynecological cancer. So women were really impacted by this shortage. And every patient who calls, we cry together. But those were some tough calls to receive. But the thing to know about drug shortages is they are not specific to a single demographic. They're impacting every patient. This is a crisis of the entire healthcare system.
For more on India's plans for its pharmaceutical industry, you can catch the full episode of Insight, Can India Cure Its Pharma Ills? Tonight at 9 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time, right here on CNA. You can also watch it on CNA Video On Demand or on CNA Insider's YouTube channel. Now, before we go, how much would you pay for a banana? The cost of a bunch here in Singapore usually ranges from $2 to $5. But over in New York, a single banana duct taped to a wall has been sold for a whopping $6.2 million. Now, it may look like an ordinary piece of yellow fruit with tape, but it is actually a conceptual sculpture by visual artist Maurizio Cattelan titled Comedian. The piece has stirred controversy in the art world since its debut in 2019. While lauded by some as a minimalistic piece of contemporary art, some critics have questioned the legitimacy of its artistic quality. Comedian also became a viral sensation online after another artist peeled the banana off the wall and ate it.
We're going to begin at $800,000, at $800,000, $850,000 now, $850,000, $900,000.
Three previous editions of the artwork reportedly sold for between $120,000 to $150,000. Chinese-born crypto entrepreneur Justin Sun's winning bid was 40 times more than that, making the artwork the world's most expensive banana.
Coming in on Sotheby's.com. 1,600,000 is with you in the room, sir. At $5 million.
$6 million for a banana. It better taste good. You've been watching East Asia Tonight. Don't forget headlines anytime at cna.asia. Plus, we are on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for your company.